Thank you so much. The subcommittee will come to order. Unfortunately, fortunately, we will be interrupted by votes because I like to be interrupted by democracy. That's always a good thing. But after recognizing myself and ranking member, my good friend Ted Deutsch from Florida, for 5 minutes each for our opening statements, I will then recognize the other members seeking recognition for 1 minute each. We will then hear from our witnesses. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. Without objection, and gentlemen, the prepared statements of all of our witnesses will be made a part of the record, and members may have 5 days in which to insert statements and questions for the record, subject to the length limitation in the rules. The Chair now recognizes herself for 5 minutes. It is a tragedy that, unfortunately, we're all too familiar with. By now, we've seen the images and heard the unimaginable stories of despair, of horror, of suffering. And we know all too well the alarming numbers. More than 150,000 people have been killed as a result of Assad's war to stay in power. Nearly 3 million people have fled from Syria into neighboring countries such as Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, creating instability within those countries as they struggle to cope with the strains that this massive influx of refugees has placed on their security and their stability. 6.5 million, that's the number of internally displaced persons, IDPs, in Syria, and 10 million, that's roughly the number of people in dire need of humanitarian assistance. And sadly, the vast majority of those hit hardest by this crisis are the women and children of Syria. We are here today to get an important assessment from those who are on the ground, who try to meet the needs of the millions of Syrians in desperate need of assistance. I would like to say thank you on behalf of our subcommittee to each and every one of you for the valuable work that you do. People who need your help, they have the courage to come here today. Thank you, and I know that comes at great risk. So far, the administration's approach to resolving the Syrian conflict leaves much to be desired by any metric. Unless the administration addresses the underlying root causes for this humanitarian disaster, we're likely to be here again next year and in the years to come asking the very same heart-wrenching questions. Getting chemical weapons out of Syria is a vital step forward, but more importantly, we must be working together to ensure that Assad leaves power so that his reign of terror ends. These past 3 years plus, the administration has been plagued by inaction, by indecisiveness, by the inability or perhaps unwillingness to put into motion a policy plan that will lead to an end to this unthinkable human tragedy, and the time for half measures and fence-sitting has long ago passed. We have been reactionary far too often where we should have been proactive. Our response has been to provide humanitarian assistance, and we will continue to provide it as long as millions continue to suffer needlessly, but that is never going to solve the problem. It is like trying to plug the holes in a sinking ship, short-term solutions to a much larger long-term problem. Syria is becoming the training grounds for violent extremists, destabilizing the entire region, endangering the security of our ally, the Democratic Jewish State of Israel, and posing a threat to our own national security interests in the region as well. To date, the United States has allocated over $1.7 billion to meet the humanitarian needs stemming from the Syrian crisis, nearly a quarter of all international contributions to Syria. And its budget, and in his budget request for fiscal year 2015, the President has requested an additional $1.1 billion. We have with us today representatives of the 5 non-governmental organizations who have helped serve as important, vital implementing partners both in Syria and in the neighboring countries. The work that these NGOs do is important, vitally important, but it is also extremely dangerous. And as the ones who have faced the obstacles on the ground, it is vital that we hear directly from them about how effective our U.S. assistance has been, with the hope of reaching as many people as possible. Just last week, the Associated Press ran a disturbing article on how corruption is seeping into the aid process for Syrian refugees. It tells the story of Syrian women who are forced to bribe middlemen in order to access some of the aid, because some of the areas are just too difficult to enter for some of the NGOs, or they simply just don't have the manpower to do it. So they rely on these middlemen to be honest brokers, and it seems that they are exploiting the loopholes in the system. And it's stories like these that show us how important today's hearing is, so that we can better understand exactly what is happening on the ground. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, these implementing partners, and what they have to go through in order to disperse the humanitarian aid that we provide, and learn from them what more we can do so that we can better ensure that more people are getting the assistance that they so desperately need. And with that, I'm pleased to yield to my ranking member, my friend, Mr. Deutsch of Florida.